What everyday skill becomes suspicious if you're too good at it? Tying a noose. At basic training, I got tasked to help the drill sergeants create their haunted house for a battalion competition. My drill asked if anyone knew how to tie a noose, and I whipped out a perfect one in only a few seconds. He just looked at me and said, "Private, what the fuck?" Typing. I'm definitely going to say typing. I type at a little over 150 WPM. I've been repeatedly accused of faking it, which sounds funny until it's your coworkers and boss saying it, calling your work into question. To answer a couple of questions, I'm a writer. I use a QWERTY keyboard, and I've been typing for a minimum of 3 hours a day for the past 16 or so years. My typing speeds have been measured in varying tests for work and school, the lowest coming in at 138 about 4 years ago, and middling out about 6 months ago at 154. The highest I've scored on any reliable test was 157 last year. Typing speeds like mine aren't all that uncommon, certainly not as much as they used to be. Nothing special, I just type a lot, doing math in your head. When I was in class and the teacher would pose a problem, I could do it in my head before the others could get out their calculators. Everyone would get annoyed and think I was cheating somehow. I have very fast reading comprehension. People never believe me when I say that I've already read something and get frustrated that I don't take longer. I can't do simple math, but I read like lightning. I'm also very good with card handling, so everyone suspects that I cheat at poker. I encourage that because it keeps their eyes on my hands and not on my face. Recognizing faces. I was approaching the check-in counter of a hotel I didn't remember being in before when the desk clerk welcomed me by name. I was visibly startled. His coworker explained, "He's got a freakish memory." I checked later and found out I had been there 3 years before, having a really good memory. I've learned that this can creep people out. I'm not an inquisitive person at all, and I'm not nosy. I just remember things when people tell me. So now I'll often pretend like it's my first time hearing something when someone tells me a personal detail they've told me before. Noticing details about people. I have moved around a lot and have worked in a lot of industries, one being tourism. If I'm a tour guide and I notice a particular brand of clothing and ask someone if they're from a particular place and am right, it's me being observant and leads to a fun discussion. If I do the same thing in line while getting coffee, it's considered creepy. Recognizing people. There have been more than a few occasions where I will have not seen a person for years, and in a few seconds of seeing their face, I know who they are. I find it a little weird too because they may not recognize me. Also, remembering things. I will remember situations from literally over a decade ago just from someone mentioning a name. Butchering. I work professionally with raptors, the feathered kind, not the clever girl kind, and for a while I was prepping on average 15 quail a day, from frozen, thawed to plucked and gutted and portioned. It's useful in the kitchen too for ducks, turkey, chicken. I've also processed venison before. Then when people find out that I work at a landfill, I fly the raptors to keep the gulls out. They are suddenly afraid to make me mad. Being male and having a natural rapport with kids. Kids really seem to like me, and I get along with them really well. Not quite sure why, but I've been given the stink eye by parents who don't know me when they see me interacting with kids like I'm the Pied Piper or something and I'm going to steal their children for something nefarious. Certain types of cleaning. A few years ago, I was at work and someone dropped a coffee pot that shattered everywhere, so glass and liquid were in a pretty good-sized area. My buddy and I left to get a mop bucket and a broom, and we weren't gone long. Another co-worker of ours stayed to pick up some of the glass, even though we told him not to do it barehanded. When we got back, he was wiping down a doorknob, and we asked him why he was doing that. As we walked into the room, the entire mess was gone. When we turned around, he had disappeared from the room. The trash had a new bag in it, and there was no trace of anyone ever being there. So in the 5 minutes it took us to get supplies and fill up a mop bucket, this kid got all the glass shards, cleared the counter and floor of coffee, taken all the trash out, and wiped down a doorknob. He should have been a custodian, but he could have been a murderer. Being sneaky. Many times in my life I've accidentally sneaked up on people at work or in stores. I get some really weird looks from people sometimes, like, "Where the F did you come from?" A lot of times I intentionally cough, sniff, or shuffle my feet so I don't scare people. Sometimes I hear other people walking and it sounds like they're stomping around like they're mad, but they just walk like that normally. I have the drug resistance of a god, but I'm not someone who abuses drugs. I can pop T3S like candy. I have been on morphine via IV and didn't feel it. I can drink a ton of caffeine or alcohol and not even feel it. One time I drank a 40 of Jaeger entirely in Jaeger bombs at a party and still didn't black out or throw up, and I wasn't even one of the drunk ones at the party. It's only for certain medications, though. There are a few medications like sleeping pills where I get completely out of it on a low dose. Anything to deal with pain, anxiety, or a lot of other things, I end up not even feeling them. Now, when I go to the hospital and the nurses in the ER see how high my drug tolerance is when I claim I'm in pain, They get very bitter and upset. They think I'm faking pain and am a junkie after drugs. One nurse refused to give me my medication when I was dying with E. coli. I ended up hospitalized for almost 2 weeks. The nurse was in the ER when I first went in, and she saw I had been in and then sent home 3 times in the previous few days. She would be late to give me my medication by about an hour, then would do things like conveniently go on break after she was an hour late for another hour. Then, after she got back, she would wait another half hour before coming back to give me medication. My parents were in the room with me and described the way she came in and gave me my hydromorphone as her walking through the door with a needle in hand, taking 3 steps to cross the room, hitting me with the needle hard enough that my parents could hear a small thud, slamming her hand on the end of the needle, then walking out of the room all in under 10 seconds. I was in so much pain I don't remember it quite well. They lodged a complaint with my family doctor about her. In the end, she only gave me medication 3 times in about 18 hours, 6 p.m. to noon, before my parents and family doctor blew up enough to have me move to another unit. 2 of those 3 times were another nurse that took over for her the next morning. In that time period, I was supposed to get 1 medication every 3 hours and another one every 6, so I only got 1/3 of the medication the doctors prescribed. There was a girl back in high school who was a bit too efficient at putting a condom on. She could get it out of its wrapper and on you in maybe 5 seconds flat, just using one hand. I work as a consultant, which means I set my own schedule. If a client sets me up with some office space, cool. The problem is that the rank and file don't understand the nature of the arrangement. They see a dude with an office who only works 2-part days each week and they start to get jealous. It starts by complaining among themselves that I'm never here, then it becomes complain about whatever will stick. They just cannot fathom someone accomplishing more in a few hours than they do all week. Like I didn't get where I am by watching the clock and dragging my feet, plebs. I have an extremely hard time tuning out other people's conversations, so if I'm in a room with a group of people all having different conversations, I can pretty much listen to them all at once without it getting jumbled. Sometimes I would know what people watch like or don't like because of this. It comes off as eavesdropping, but in reality, I can't help it. So when I give gifts or talk to people about common interests, they seem surprised. I once went to a science convention, and they had a rectoscopy simulator there. It was this camera snake-able thing that you feed into a fake hole in the machine, and a screen showed a fake camera feed from the tunnel colon. I got such a good score that the woman at the booth said, "You must have done this before." I work at a university where students lock their keys in their cars on a daily basis. If you are unlocking cars 5, 10 times a week, every week for years, it becomes an everyday talent. One of the hardest cars to break into, for me, was an old Saturn. Something about the way the door fit into the frame of the car made it very difficult. I have a very good sense of smell, and I can frequently tell which of my friends, classmates, co-workers, or family members have been in a room recently by their smell. Usually it's their laundry detergent or shampoo. I can usually tell what the brand or scent is, too. I don't really talk about it because it creeps people out. Not sure how suspicious it is, but I am really good at making beds, and being in college, it really weirds out my friends and past girlfriends. I used to be in the Air Cadets, so I know hospital corners and everything. I also have a somewhat anal retentive personality, and I love a snug bed. The result is a perfectly made bed to military standards. 2 things really: post-mortem body prep for the morgue and making the call for time of death. Too many nurses are too squeamish to do a full assessment of a patient who may or may not have passed, let alone clean and remove devices prior to pickup. I've wound up doing this way too many times not to have left a mark. Googling. I did some journalism and IT in college and work as a programmer, so I'm decently good at knowing what search terms to use. If you don't do extra work to guard your identity and have any distinguishing factors, uncommon name being the easiest, I can probably find out where you live within 5 to 10 minutes. Once, after listening to a true story on the radio from 10, 20 years ago, I had already found out whether the couple in the story were still together. They jointly own an apartment these days, before I realized I was being creepy. Another time, a coworker and I were doing the "I know where you live" joke. We live in the same complex, and he pointed out he could go to his parents' house and I don't know where they live. I showed him that in 5 minutes I not only knew where they lived, but their names and some of his siblings' names. I never use my powers for evil, but it still is a little creepy. In dance, there is a term called visual silence, which is just what it sounds like: a total lack of movement to a point that the audience is getting no new stimulus from movement. To accomplish this, you have to find a point of relaxation and engagement. Every day we sit still or stand still while listening to someone, but it becomes very suspicious when you're actually suddenly a mannequin. Why isn't he moving? He's just smiling and staring into the distance, apparently filling in forms. I was applying for a job once, and the recruiting agency wanted me to log on to their application system and fill in a bunch of information on a whole cartload of online forms and do a whole whole lot of little tests of typing speed and basic kindergarten-level aptitude and logic tests, standard stuff. As I was hanging up the phone with them to begin looking at the test, the recruiter lady mentioned that the tests had a time limit, so don't take too long. Damn it, I hate being rushed, but I jumped on and started them anyway. I was about 2/3 through and 20 minutes in when I got a phone call from family. The kind of call where you just cannot get the other person off the phone. It went on and on and on. Half an hour later, I finally got rid of them and went back to the test, doing the last 10 minutes worth and submitting. Now, the test suite would show you your progress by showing you a little fake trophy room with a bunch of little fake trophies, one for each section completed, and so I had a screen full of little fake gold cups and whatnot. But between when I'd started and when I'd finished, 60 minutes had passed because of the phone call, when there was really only 30 minutes of work involved, and I was kind of worried that this would reflect badly on me, even though it wasn't my fault. So I rang up the recruiter lady and told her I had finished the tests. You can't have finished the tests. Why? Because the time limit to complete them is 60 hours, and no one's ever done it in less than 30. Do the rest of the tests. You must have missed most of them. I don't know what to say. Look at my fake trophy room, which you can see with your supervisor testing ID. It's full. I have all the trophies. There is literally nothing more I can do. Check the answers to all the questions and the contents of all the forms if you don't believe me. You must not have done it right. I'm erasing all the trophies and forms. Do everything again. So 30 minutes later, I phoned her again and asked her to check and confirm that my trophy page was indeed once again full. She still didn't believe that I'd done everything without some kind of voodoo, but apparently didn't want to have me repeatedly phoning her back twice an hour saying, I've done it all again, so fortunately at that point, she kicked it upstairs to someone who gave not a single crap how long the forms had taken to fill out. I mean, it's not like I had an entire CV full of experience working in government with pretty much exactly the same kinds of forms, and therefore had almost all the information they wanted already stored and ready to be cut and pasted, rather than having to go research each item for an hour or so. And it's not like she could have trivially checked that, being a recruiter with a fresh copy of my CV to hand. No, it was much easier to just assume I had somehow fooled their computer system into magically generating all the right answers for me out of thin air, because that makes much more sense. As a cross-dresser, pretty much anything I know about women's clothing. I can unhook a bra one-handed, know the name of every piece of women's clothing, styles of dresses, and a bunch of other stuff. Shopping with friends and family who are, for some reason, looking at women's clothing forces me to try to be stupid. Inside, I definitely know what is right or wrong and what everything is called. I always say that I like to remember my romantic partners by their scent, skin texture, and flavor. No one believed me. One day we were chilling on the street and someone came from behind me and covered my eyes without a word. My friend said, "You'll never know who it is." I sniffed a perfume, always used the same dose, not too subtle, not too much, and said her name. She was my ex from some years ago. Everyone looked at me as if I was some kind of police dog. Another one asked me what I missed most from her, and I said caressing her burn marks on her wrist arms. People thought it was kind of a fetish, but when I met her, she had something like a trauma thinking that people would be put off by her scars, so it meant a world to her self-esteem.
You've been listening to Spill the Tea, a Reddit podcast. We hope our real-life stories help inspire and inform people. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories and insights from real people. Hit the like button, share with your friends, and leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.